Welcome to the Quality Conversation brought to you by C Squared Technology. The goal here is to discuss one of the most challenging topics in talent acquisition right now, attracting high quality candidates in the age of AI. My name is Serge. I'm your host, and today I have a man that I feel is one of the most qualified person to talk about anything when it comes to talent acquisition. My friend, Trent Cotton. Trent is the VP of Talent at Hatchworks AI and is the human capitalist. Trent, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's been a long time. We haven't hung out in a hot minute.
Yeah, it's been a little while. I think the last time I saw you in person was at RecFest last year, and
Yes,
I've
it
seen you
was.
went this year, and I had serious photos.
I did.
But it's good
I
to see you at
did.
least virtually, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I actually sent you a thing on LinkedIn, right? I was like, hey, where are you? Because I was hunting you down
I know, and that actually did not help at all.
with your FOMO. I'm sorry.
I'm like, dude, no, I'm not there.
Yeah.
But Trent, you've been around a long time in the talent acquisition space, well, the talent space in general. But before we
Mhm.
dive in deeper, would love to get a little bit of a quick, brief intro on who Trent is and how you got into the talent space.
Okay. So you know the story. I actually got into HR after working as a business line leader in banking. The last job that I had was I was managing 4 states for a mortgage company. So I had
Yeah.
50 some odd loan officers. I did commercial banking, private banking. And I was just like, you know what, a loan's a loan. I'd been working in banking since high school and I wanted to do a pivot. And my grandmother always taught me when you really have challenging work, it's whenever you go and you break something and recreate it better. And so I was like, all right, I do want to stay in business. What is broken that I think that I can fix? And it came down to accounting departments / procurement and HR. And so I'd already gotten kicked out of accounting because apparently they don't like practical jokes in that department.
Oh, no.
So I was like, well, I'll give HR an opportunity. And so, you know, my goal was to go in and really just kind of shake things up. And the one thing that hasn't changed is I still approach HR, I call it human capitalism or the human capital aspect. I still approach it the same way.
Yeah.
It's a business asset. So whenever people ask me, how do I define my role? It is, I am in charge of the largest expense and the largest revenue producing asset in the organization. And every decision that I make goes through that lens.
Yeah.
So it's why I'm so passionate about talent. I'm definitely passionate about the topic we're going to sink our teeth into today.
And you have a couple of books that talk exactly about that when you talk about high performance
Yep.
recruiting and how you're taking operations and bringing into the talent acquisition, the talent space in general. So everyone
Mhm.
listening and watching, please do check that out. I'm curious,
Thank you.
Trent, before we get really the nitty gritty, Hatchworks AI, I'm just
Mhm.
curious of what type of roles that you hire for. And then I would love to get a little bit of sense what your recruiting process looks like right now.
All right, great question. So we build AI solutions and software development for our clients. So we've got kind of 2 different modules that we go through, or 2 different avenues. One is your traditional staff aug. The other is that we go and we actually hire project teams to build it from discovery to deployment. And what's interesting about this role compared to some of the other roles that I've had to do is not just that component, you know, hiring consultants and billable resources. The other aspect is that we hire in both the US and Latin America. And, you know, that presents a whole new opportunity of talent. And I love that. I love being able to talk to some of our team members in not just different countries, but different cultures. You know,
Yeah.
they approach things and they look at things completely different. And it's been fascinating for me as I think I'm an undercover anthropologist because I just love like the human story and all the different facets of it. But looking at our recruiting process, whenever I came on, we were doing kind of that one-to-one recruiting. So we had one rec, we would go and find a senior .NET developer or senior React developer.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I found was that as soon as the recruiter would close that role, they would forget about all the candidates that went through the process. And then we get another .NET or React developer and they go, where are we in this position? All right, I'm sourcing. Why in the hell are we sourcing? Like we just literally filled one of these 2 weeks ago. So we do use the sprint recruiting methodology, which is my approach to applying agile to recruiting. So we recruit in 2 week sprints. We have the prioritization. You know the drill. But what we did is we shifted to more of talent pipelining.
Okay.
So we started looking at, we need software developers that have got a range of different tech stacks. And we put them through that process, whether we have an open position or not. Same thing for dev ops, same thing for machine learning, data, AI. We kind of call them our core. And we build those pipelines. And what we do is we move them through the pre-screen. We have an online assessment that we provide for all of our developers or anyone that's in that tech field. Then we have a technical interview, and then we have one of our hiring managers interview them and give them a thumbs up, thumbs down. Then that asset becomes client ready, meaning if we've got a project and we need them staff, we put them on there. If it's a staff aug opportunity, we go to the candidate and say, this is a year contract or this is a year project. Are you interested in it? What it did is it allowed us to just, on software developer, I think last year our time to fill was 14 to 17 days, depending on the tech stack, because we have people ready to go. So that was a little bit of a mind shift from how I grew up in recruiting, but it's a lot more fun because now it's managing that pipeline, keeping them engaged. You know, we try to send out newsletters to them with new tech, new things that we're learning. So it's a little bit different process than your traditional throw something out there and hope to God that somebody applies.
The tech space has been one of those areas where I've heard the craziest stories recently. I just recently heard a story of they hired someone that was different than who they interviewed. Has that happened to you?
I have heard of that happening.
You have heard, yeah.
I have consulted someone where that happened, and they were in this particular scenario. To me, it's kind of one of the fun aspects of my job is that a lot of times, you know, our clients will come and go, hey, can you give us some advice on recruiting? Or, hey, here's an HR issue. What do you think? And so getting into the situation, I was like, so what's going on? Well, this person interviewed and then we hired this person, but they sound different now that we've hired them and we're having performance issues and they don't seem to know about the things for the person that we hired. And it was probably one of the most challenging because the person would never turn their camera on. We couldn't really validate. And, you know, they were like, can we just terminate them? I said, not really. Because, I mean, what are you going to do? Say their voice changed? I mean, they verified everything. We just had to hope to God. It's 6 months. Just work it out for the 6 months and hope to God that they deliver the project. And they did. But the other thing, too, is who you interview, you really have to have that camera on now because you need to see if they have one of these. You know, for the longest time, I was like, oh, well, they just do that like me because I like to be able to hear. And, you know, if I'm in the office, I don't need everybody to kind of hear what's going on. But then we started to realize, you know, you'd ask a question, they pause, and you watch their eyes, and it's like they're looking to the ear where the person's speaking to them to give them the answer. And I never thought that we would get to that point. But that seemed to have died down. But last year, that was pretty rampant, especially in the tech world.
If you have the chance, go on TikTok, just search AI interview, and there's a bunch of people just bragging on how they did this. But that's a huge challenge for companies hiring these folks, right? Like at one particular point, you actually have to do the job. You cannot rely on AI or ChatGPT or whatever you're leveraging on every aspect. You need to have some in-depth knowledge, especially as a software developers. Because I think the debt of the software developer being replaced by AI was greatly exaggerated, I would say, because we're 3 years in and we have not seen that. Unless you have seen something different, because obviously you're...
I don't know. If you really want to have your mind blown away, go and look at Claude's recent announcement. I think it's Sonnet. I say Sonnet because I grew up speaking both French and English, but I think it's called Sonnet. Yeah. You can literally get it to go in the video on the announcement on their YouTube. You know, the guy says, hey, I need to scrape this site and fill out this form for me. And so it writes just something very simple in Claude. And then they go and they put it in the little thing and it shows the screen and it just fills out the form for the individual. So I do agree with you that there needs to be a base knowledge.
Yes.
But I think that in the tech world, there's so many things like Copilot, like Claude. You know, even GPT can kind of help you create that base code. I think what's happening is that now we're shifting more into, you don't need to just be able to do hands to keyboard. You need to have a lot of critical thinking. You need to have those soft skills. And there was something, I think it was Talent Connect on LinkedIn shared some data that if you go and you look on the learning platforms, the thing that is the most valued now are soft skills.
Yeah.
Because I think everyone is starting to understand that a lot of the process work is going to be automated. So we need people that can build on top of that and go one step further. Critical thinking, same thing. Critical thinking, being able to look at the code and say, this is where the issue is. Is it something that is really going to cause that much trouble down the road? So to be able to have the critical thinking to identify it and then understand its impact down the future, I think that's going to become a lot more prevalent. And how we assess those skills, number one, assess them, but then two, how do we develop those? Because some of them are just, you either have it or you don't. Like salespeople, whenever I hired salespeople that worked for me, there was an X factor that I looked for.
Yes.
That internal drive, that grit, that intellectual curiosity. That was not something that I found in the amount of time that I did it. You either had it or you didn't. That was not something that I could develop. Now, if they had all of that and didn't know how to position a banking product, I could teach them that all day long. I could not teach them that X factor.
No, I agree. And I think this conversation is highlighting the challenge that we're having in the industry of defining quality. What does it mean? I've talked to many people that it's really hard. You need this license, you need this certifications. That's what we're looking at. In your world, like, have you worked with React? Have you worked in Java? But like for you, how do you define what a quality candidate is?
Well, it does come down to the soft skills like we had talked about before. And what's interesting is one of the things that we have seen in the tech industry is this ability. It was so much on the tech skills. And do you have 7 years of React? Have you coded in this kind of an environment? And that was paramount. And now we are seeing a shift into, I want more of a consultative approach. And so as a firm, we are actually moving toward that direction. We came up with, these are the behaviors that a consultant has. We did that by all of our experience, as a kind of the leadership team. But then we also looked at who are those on our team that our clients just adore, like would threaten us if we took them off of their project. And if we could build an entire organization of these 5 to 10 people, what would that mean for us in terms of our trajectory? So we came up with some I call them the seven deadlies, the 7 most important skills that we look for. And then we use as an assessment plum.io, which I know you're familiar with. And the reason I like Plum is it's not a personality test. It's not and I love DISC, I love strength finders. But what I do find for a lot of people that are not in the talent space is they use it as a pass fail. And I'm in a technology world where most of them think in a very binary fashion. So I can't have them go, well, they don't have the strength, they're out. No, that's not necessarily the case. So, for those that don't know about Plum, is it measures across 10 talents what drives you and what drains you. So as an example, conflict resolution drains me. It doesn't mean that I can't do it. In fact, whenever I was going over it with my CEO, he goes, but you do this a lot and you do it well. I said, I know, but it exhausts me. If I had a job where all I was doing was employee relations, I could do it for 90 days, but on the 91st day, expect a resignation. I cannot function.
Amen, brother.
Right? Yes. My top 3 are innovation, surprise, execution, surprise, and managing. That's where I can work 15 hours and just have all the energy in the world. 3 hours doing, some kind of employee negotiation or whatever. It's like, all right, I need a nap. I've got to reboot. So what we did is we had those 7 deadlies of this is how we define a consultant. And then I worked with the psychologist with Plum and said, map these over to the talents. And so now we're able to go and say, hey, this is what a consultant looks like. And we're able to actually have something that measures against that definition, not an inference. And again, it's not a pass fail. All right. So if I need someone that is 50% consultant, okay, cool. And then I go and I look at the talents and they're about 50% of the way. Cool. That's a good fit. They're not going to be drained. They're not going to be too driven. They're going to be right down the middle. That's fine. That's a steady Eddie. That's what we need.
Yeah.
But if I need someone who is going to come in and drive innovation and be highly communicative with the client, then I'm going to go and I'm going to look at within our skill set and within our talent pipeline, who's the best fit. And to me, I wish that I would have discovered this a lot sooner, because it's a win-win. Our clients are happy because we're putting the right person in the right role at the right time. Our employees are happy because they are doing work that they are driven by, and work is good. So that's kind of our approach now. It's fairly new. We're in the infancy stages, but I was really worried about how our employee base was going to take to it.
Yeah.
They love it. They
Okay.
love it. And so for me, that's the invigorating part. And I do think that we're going to start to see a lot more organizations change their definition of quality.
Okay.
More on the soft versus just the technical, because you can teach technical,
Yeah,
if they have the critical thinking, right?
so let's put that in perspective of posting a job. You're looking to hire a software developer as an example. One of the complaints that I've been hearing a lot is it's just a large amount of candidates, especially in the last couple of years, like 3 years during the pandemic. That wasn't an issue. It was really hard to find one. But in the last couple of years, that has changed dramatically. And a lot of folks attested to candidates leveraging AI to either help craft their resume so it looks really good, even though they don't physically have the skills. I've seen some wild examples of just like, how did you get from here to there?
Right.
I don't know if you're advertising a lot of jobs, because you discuss your process as far as like having a bench, a talent pipeline. But when you do, have you had that happen to you where just a large amount of unqualified candidates?
Yes.
Some of it could be the lazy apply bots as well, which has been a major problem in the last 6 months. But what has been your experience there?
I would love to draw and quarter who came up with these easy apply bots without putting some kind of QA measure in there, because the idea, the concept, and the problem that they were trying to solve for the user, which in this case is the candidate, was great. But the lack of QA and the lack of thought about what this is going to do to the recruiters, and who's going to pay for it, which is ultimately the candidate. So yes, I post a position out there. I get 500 candidates. 7 years ago, I would have been excited, like, holy crap, this is fantastic. Now it's like, holy crap. All right, let me look at how many of them are not even in a country that we're hiring in. And even in the bold, it says, we are willing to hire someone in Brazil, Peru, Costa Rica, Colombia, like all of these different places. Bangladesh is not an option, so first I need to go in there and I need to decline everyone that is not location specific. And by the time I finally get to looking at who may be qualified just from a small sample, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. And it breaks my heart for the candidates that actually are qualified and they just want a damn chance, So there are some measures. There are some things that I'm looking at from a vendor standpoint of how do I process through this quickly and be able to level up and bring to the surface those candidates who technically on paper are the most qualified. Then if I can put them through some type of an AI process that further evaluates things. I checked out some tech not too long ago where they go, we measure soft skills and their confidence level in their answers. I said, that's fascinating. Tell me how. So it's everything from word count. It's everything from the excitement, the tone of the voice. So like all of these things that AI can now measure and say, this person is 100% confident in their react ability. They tested at a 90%. They said they were great at C#. Their answers and the inflection of the voice said that they were a little trepidatious. Those are all things that I do whenever I'm interviewing someone, that now I can outsource that. And now whenever I go and I sit down and say, hey, not as strong in C#. This job requires a lot of C#. What are you willing to do? What are you willing to learn? It's a completely different conversation versus, do you have this? Check. Do you have that? Check. I want that outsourced.
I'm going to give you a recruiter confession here, and I've done this and I'm not happy about it. In the particular cases that I get 1,000 applicants, and it's happened in roles that I've recruited, it's actually probably hurt a lot of folks because I never got to them. I probably missed a lot of qualified candidates because what happened is it was based on recency. I started looking at the top of the ATS. And then I'm like, okay, I'm now at 100. I found three, kind of screw the rest based on timing and everything.
Yes.
So it actually hurt some really qualified candidate. And to your point, the lazy apply tools, they're hurting the
They are.
candidates more. They're creating a noise in the infrastructure in a time where there's a lot less recruiters. Talent acquisition teams
Hmm.
have shrunk in the last couple of years, and that might shift. We
Hmm.
know how that market goes, but it's not helping in any way. The other factor that I was curious about, because obviously there's the lazy apply tools, but there's been the easy apply tools, meaning the one click apply, and I'm guilty. I was a big proponent of it because applications were so hard. You were basically loading your resume, entering your information over again, and just like a really bad candidate experience. But I've come to the conclusion that easy apply has probably been bad for the industry. What's your thoughts? Am I wrong there?
It's funny to me because I think of how many times, like whenever I have had to apply for a position, and there was one time in particular, and it should have been an indicator. It's one of those times where, running toward red flags can either mean you're going to a circus or you're heading to a disaster. You need to be perceptive enough to figure out which it is. This one, it was a circus that was a disaster.
Yeah.
But I remember I uploaded my resume, and then it says, "Hey, we've parsed your resume into the application," and none of it was in the right place.
Yes.
None of it. Like, I'd spent more time just basically re-entering everything in. So whenever the easy apply came, I was like, okay, this is great. This is a
Yeah.
fantastic way. But again, there's no fail safe there. So, you've got people that go, I've got 2 of the 10 requirements, so I am qualified. I should apply, which they do, which is fantastic.
Is it
But it is,
fantastic? Like if you have two
well, I
out
mean,
of ten?
it's fantastic for the candidate that they
Okay, fair
believe
enough.
that, but it does put the recruiter in a very awkward stance of going, how many twos do I need to get to before I can get to an 8 to a 10, right? In terms of number of qualifications. So I'm not as adamantly opposed. I have kind of a love-hate relationship with easy apply.
Yeah, here's where I'm coming from because I agree. I think it was so screwed up that something needed to be fixed.
Hmm.
And instead of fixing the first principle problem of, okay, this technology doesn't work like the way it should, we decided to eliminate any friction. And I think there should be some friction in the application process. And maybe I'm
Hmm.
biased in that sense. But I don't want a workday process. I think we've all talked about it. You need a login for every time you apply. But I think a little bit of friction is not a bad thing because you're kind of showing some effort in applying. But it should be friction that is actually valuable. Like you're asking me particular questions to validate that I am who I am or that
Hmm.
particular skill instead of spending time re entering information like you just mentioned because the parsing was all wrong.
Well, and let me take a different slant on that. So you were asking about quality in our process. So, there are candidates that are out there like, I should interview with the recruiter, with the hiring manager, and I should get an offer. In a
Yeah.
perfect world, I would almost agree.
Yeah.
Okay. However, there are some recruiters, I love them. There are some recruiters, I don't trust their judgment, which is why I want the hiring manager interviewing them. And then there are some hiring managers, I don't trust their judgment. So I do want another level up. Now, having 6 to 10, no, I mean, come on, you're reaching economies of scale. Either pull the trigger or just close the damn position, for God's sake. We ran into, and the recruiting team and I had a lot of back and forth about this whenever I put in the assessment, because they were like, you're going to make them do an assessment and then go to a technical interview and then go to the hiring manager. And then if we have to place them on a client, the client has to do it. I'm like, yeah, because I go out and I tell our clients and our prospects, we hire the top
Yeah.
1%. And the top 1% will go through an entire process to prove that they are the absolute right one. And if a candidate says, oh, I don't think I need to take an assessment, that's fantastic. I wish you the best of luck. Let me give you 5 of our competitors who don't do that because I want you to waste their time while I'm eating their lunch. That's my approach to it. That's the friction that I do want to apply. Now,
Yeah.
I want them to be handheld through that entire process.
Yes.
So after that assessment, hey, you did fantastic. Here are some areas that I think the technical interview is going to go through. You can lessen that friction by giving them a better candidate experience, right? There's a trade-off there. And back whenever I was only doing recruiting, I was working for a very large international institution, and I was recruiting the top executives. I was supporting the COO at the time. Whenever I picked up the phone and I said, "Hey, Raphael, this is someone I want you to speak to,"
Yeah.
there was never a question. There was get with Terry and clear my schedule,
Yeah.
because he knew that I had that person interviewing. I interviewed them 2 different times. The first time was trying to get them, here's a sexy job. I really want you to check it out. And then I get a couple of people to validate, yeah, this person's really good. And then I would go in and I would dig deeper into them. I would start the interview and say, this is the last interview before I put you with the big
Yeah.
boss, which is the COO. I'm going to talk you out of this job.
Yeah.
Here's all the good, bad, and ugly. And if they were still in there, Raphael, he would drill them. He would drill them. But they were ready. They knew the ugly stuff. They had already, if they were good enough, they were thinking about, this is how I'm going to help you overcome that obstacle. So I do think we need to reclaim that
Yeah.
in the human capital space. I look at it as being Gandalf in, what is that, Lord of the Rings, where he is standing in that thing, the path. I'm not a Lord of the Rings nerd, but I do know this part. And he stands with the staff against this massive monster. He goes, you shall not pass. And I tell any recruiter and recruiting team that I work with or I manage, I want you to be Gandalf. And trust me, if you say that person can't come past the door, you're not going to get a question from me. Not at all. Not at all. In fact, you'll get a high five.
So refreshing. I think you're solving the problem right at its core. And I think that's what we have to do, because I think we've forgotten in recruitment marketing and employment brand that a big part of our job is having candidates opt out on their own as well. And I think you just described it there. Like I describe this as Instagram versus reality. You look at a lot of job ads, you look at like their employment brand, their website, everything is positive, right? It's the greatest place to work. And it's like saying, James Ellis told me this, and I thought it was a perfect description of it. Is like, if I tell you that you're going to come to work for us and cuddle puppies all day long, you're going to be pretty excited, right? Then you show up on your first day and you can only cuddle puppies half of the day. Now you're disappointed. You're disappointed. Yeah. It's like, you told me I would cuddle puppies all day. So let's give them the realistic picture, the warts and all, because it's going to come out. It's like when you're meeting someone on the first date, well, eventually you're going to start seeing the flaws. And I think if you can get to the point of, okay, here's where we excel, we do a really good job, here are our challenges, it gives a candidate a way better perspective. Yes, I can deal with that. And when they're in the role, they're expecting it, compared to being completely blindsided of,
yes,
okay, this is not what you told me. Now I did not take the other offer. I decided to come join your company and you screwed me.
And that is malpractice. At the end of the day, I don't care what you say. That is malpractice for everyone that is involved. Now, there's a flip side of that, though, Serge. If you think about it, so let's say I'm interviewing with you for an executive role, and you say, Trent, here's all the great stuff. I get really excited. And what you're looking for is someone that is a builder, someone that is a problem solver. I get excited about that, but then you start telling me about the problems, and then after the interview, I'm emailing you and go, hey, have you guys thought about this? Have you done this? Have you done that? You know that I'm engaged because I like to build, I like to solve problems, so keeping that away from someone when you're trying to evaluate that skill set, you're not truly evaluating. For me, for our Hatchwork team, I want people that are excited about problems. I want people who are, there is nothing that will keep them from going to sleep than a problem that they can't solve. Those kinds of people, I want them on, because they're going to change the world.
Exactly. And if you only shared the positive, you would have never uncovered that at all in their personality. And honestly, like a catalyst would not be interested in that job. It's like, I'm going to solve problems. That's why I'm here.
I know that we're talking a lot about recruiting and human capital HR, but I do want to take a minute to talk to the hiring managers who think that because of the market, because of all of these candidates, it should be quicker for the recruiting team or the HR partner to be able to go and find a candidate. That is the furthest thing from the truth, because we are having to spend more time trying to figure out wheat from chaff, right? So it's more interviews, it's more screening, it's going through a whole lot of malarkey. So for the love of God and everything holy, when we have gone through that process and we have validated, qualified candidates, make sure that you give your recruiting team feedback in a timely manner.
Amen. I think that's my biggest frustration as being a recruiter is chasing feedback because I'm trying to
Yes.
deliver for the candidate. I'm trying to deliver for you. I want the best hiring experience across the board. I'm thinking about our brand. We're dealing with a real person, and a job
Yeah.
is definitely stressful when you're looking for a job. Right? Like put yourself in their shoes, right?
Mm-hmm.
The candidate. So if you're not giving any feedback in a timely manner, it's your fault. It's your fault, Mr.
Yes.
Or Mrs. Hiring Manager. And I could do this all day, Trent. This has
Me
been
too.
such a
You
fun
hit a
conversation.
passion for me, man.
I do want to end with one last question that I'm
Okay.
really curious about. So, historically, in the recruitment advertising space, it's when I'm talking about companies and talent acquisition departments, we really incentivize our providers, our vendors, our job boards that we work with to provide us with quantity. Those days are over. I think we're all looking for a way more focused amount of quality that actually fit the requirements. And even if I need to pay more for that particular candidate, I think we need to start having that discussion with our vendors, being like, "Hey, I'm willing to pay more, but you got to deliver more quality." I just wanted to get your thoughts around that. I know you've been in this space a long time. I know you've probably leveraged all these different types of tools. How do we move away from that quantity mindset in this space and basically switching it up and going to more quality focus, less candidates, but way more focus on the skill sets that we need?
If there is an industry that I wish would hit Control Alt Delete, it would be recruiting, marketing, and the job
Yeah.
boards.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm going to give an example to kind of answer your
Please.
question. I do a lot of content. All right,
Mm.
and not too long ago, I had something that hit like 70,000. I don't remember. It was a lot. And I remember showing my husband. I was like, "Look, this article or whatever kind of took off," and he goes, "That's fantastic. That's this." I was like, "But it didn't pay me anything." A
Mm.
lot of people saw it, but I made no money off of this.
Mm.
They got my knowledge for free.
Mm.
And I look at the recruitment marketing because they'll come and they'll say, "You got 70,000 clicks, and that's what you're going to pay us for this particular job that you have posted." Okay, out of that 70,000, 10,000 of them applied, and 4 of them were qualified. Why am I going to pay you on the top of the funnel? I don't need you at the top of the funnel. Not anymore.
Yeah.
That's not where my problem is. My problem is the middle.
Mm.
And so I would love to see something that says, we will guarantee you that in the next X number of days, through our solution, our little black box that we're able to do, we will hand deliver to you 5 qualified candidates in the next 2 weeks. But it's going to cost you 2 times more than the 70,000 clicks.
Yeah.
Okay, sold. I mean, I don't. Are you trying to talk me into it, or like what? What's the deal? Like, let's do this. Send me the paper. I'll sign. It's kind of like that TikTok or Instagram where they see something, they just take their credit card out and hit it on the
Yeah.
table.
Yeah.
That would have been me. You're like, bring it on,
Exactly.
because in most of the recruiting, partners that I still talk to, their departments have been gutted.
Yeah.
Their budgets have been gutted. Their workload has increased, and now their candidate pool and application has gone 4 times. Everyone is trying to look for what is the most cost-effective way that I can bring the highest talent in. And we're going to have to start thinking differently. And that includes how we market these positions, which again, that's why I much prefer our process of talent pipelines and things
Yeah.
like that.
Absolutely.
Because when we're working with, let's say it's a client that wants us to, do a staff aug position, we need I don't know some Flutter developer. Okay, we don't really have those. So I'm going to go ahead and set the expectation. It's going to be 45 days before I can find someone.
Yeah.
Now, you need to React. Give me 2 weeks.
Mm.
I just need to see who's in our pod that's really interested and all of that. To me, that's a different value prop. That's not what, if someone's looking for a search agency, I'm different. I'm a boutique. I've got this that I know I can do really well, and I can tell you within 4 or 5 days how quickly we can get that filled. Or if you play outside of that, I'll still guarantee you a certain period of time, but it's going to take me longer because I'm starting from zero. I want recruitment marketing to look at talent differently.
Mm.
And if they do, and they can solve that problem for me in a unique way, they could just about name their check.
Trent, I've always understood, but I'm hoping our audience will understand how much a guru and how in-depth and how passionate you are about this space.
Okay.
I could not have picked a better guest for this episode because the insights that you've shared are fantastic. Like I always leave our conversation so inspired and being like, yes, we can be better in recruitment. And we can be the solution to a lot of business challenges that are coming across. So on that note,
we are the solution.
We are the solution.
We just need to start acting like it.
I love that. If anyone wants to get a hold of you, Trent, where's the best place? I'm assuming LinkedIn, anywhere else?
Yeah, definitely LinkedIn. Or if you want to hear me blabber about more stuff, you can go to trentcotton.com. You can look at The Human Capitalist on YouTube. I am going to actually hopefully have Serge on as a potential podcast guest. We will be talking, the whole viewpoint for that is, yes, AI is changing the workforce, but how do we move from human resources to that human capital and earn that seat at the table? And what's going to be the impact of AI, and also to just some real cool, fun conversations. So just hit me up if you have questions. I love to talk. And Serge, I love our conversations. I do leave. It's like I told you earlier, it's like, I need this today. So yes, I need to talk to you today. So I do appreciate you always being so kind.
Well, and I appreciate this. So everyone do check out Trent. We could talk all day. This could be a 4-hour episode, but let's not do that this time. There's so much we can talk about when we're trying to define what quality in this space looks like. And I think we made some progress today. So on that note, for our listeners, thank you for listening. And please do check out c2technology.com. And again, my name is Serge Boudreau. Find me on LinkedIn. Would love to connect and talk about this. On that note, au revoir. Au revoir.